Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. I work as a mechanic for a car shop in my town. It's a locally owned and run repair place that started up many years ago. The shop runs out of an old warehouse and has a bunch of broken down cars and pieces of cars sitting outside. They're stored in what we refer to as the scrapyard. That's just the name we give it, though most of the scrapyard is cars waiting for parts to arrive. Anyway, my job for the past 2 years has been to order and keep track of stock that goes in and out. The best time to do this is when it's not busy, so overnight, I guess I kind of doubled as a security guard too, because it wasn't uncommon for crazy people or teenagers to jump the fence and try to mess with or steal stuff from the scrapyard. On this night, I got into work at 8 o'clock. I talked to my boss for a bit before he left for the night, and then it was just me in the warehouse all alone. It was raining outside, so inside the building, it was really noisy. It was also calming, in a way, though I did my usual routine of going through the orders that the mechanics had sent in and checking what had been used during the day. It was nothing out of the ordinary, but 2 cars needed very specific parts, and for one of them, the mechanic didn't write down the model year. Sometimes that can be really important. I got up from the desk and walked through the warehouse looking for this gray Nissan Versa so I could confirm what part 1 needed to obtain. As I got to the end of the warehouse, though, I still couldn't find it anywhere. I sighed, knowing it had to be somewhere in the scrapyard, which, of course, was on the one day it happened to be raining out. I went back to my desk, and after a brief coffee break, I grabbed my jacket and flashlight and went to the back door. The rain seemed to have really picked up since I was last outside. In the distance, I could immediately see the car I was looking for hiding between a few other vehicles. I stepped out into the rain and started walking over, turning on my flashlight. As I got about to the center of the scrapyard, though, a sudden movement of something in front of me made me stop in my tracks. It was just at the edge of my light. I wasn't able to see much, but it looked like a person hiding behind one of the cars and moving around. The rain covered up any sound I may have heard, so all I could tell was this brief glance. I stood there and held my flashlight, waiting to see any more movement. I called out to them, "Hello, I saw you just move, so get out of here already." I was hoping it was just some kid messing around. I took a few steps closer to where I'd seen them and yelled again for them to leave the property. I didn't see anything moving. I moved closer and started to look around the whole area. I figured that whoever it was must have left at my warning. Honestly, I was a bit relieved I didn't have to call the cops or do anything drastic. I quickly walked over to the Nissan and wrote down the model year, then jogged back to the warehouse and went inside. I took off my jacket and sat back at the desk, filling out the rest of the info and sending through the order. I was there for another half hour, filling out more of those order requests. Once I finished with that, I had to do the stock counting and the actual warehouse part of the building. By then, it was probably 1 a.m. or so. I walked along the shelves and checked what everyday products and parts had been used up. While making my way down the first set of shelves, though, a sudden, loud thud rang through the warehouse, then the lights went out. I stood there with my eyes wide open, staring into the dark abyss around me. I couldn't see anything, but between the sound of the rain hitting the roof, I could hear footsteps walking through the building. I stared in the direction of where this sound was coming from, and I could immediately tell that whoever this was, they were coming right for me. I didn't know what to do at this point. I was sure that whoever was in here had shut the power off. But why were they here in the first place? I didn't know, and without light, I couldn't even run away. All I could do was listen to the footsteps grow louder as I stared into the pitch black. I hoped they didn't know exactly where I was. They were only about 10 feet away when I heard them stop. After a moment, I heard a box open and things being shifted around. The footsteps then began going away again. I was holding my breath the whole time. After 30 seconds, it was completely silent. I waited for a few minutes before finally taking my phone out and calling 911. I then used the flashlight on it to move toward the breaker room. I found the switch flipped off and switched the power back on. Looking through the warehouse with the police, all that had been left were wet shoe prints going throughout the building and out the back door. It seemed like the person that had been out in the scrapyard had slipped in while I was outside. The door was still unlocked. Then they obviously stole a bunch of gear. Even though they didn't have the intent to hurt me, likely, who knows what could have happened if they knew I was standing only a few feet away from them without me ever getting a good look at them. There's no telling if they came armed and willing to do anything. Something scary happened when I went to visit my parents' new home. You might believe me, you might not, but this is the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. I was a student studying in Tokyo, and it was summer break, so I headed back to Okayama, a rural area in Japan. It had been about a year since I had last seen my parents, and since I had gone off to university, they had moved house. So this was all new to me when I came back. We used to live in a built-up area, but my parents had now moved out to the countryside. When I say countryside, I mean there was literally nothing around except for forests and mountains. I got off the train, and my parents met me at the station. They drove me back to their new place, which took about 40 minutes or so. There was nothing but rice fields and a few residential areas along the way. There was nothing to do after the initial buzz of homecoming passed, and I grew bored quite quickly. I decided to take a walk to get to know the area a bit better. I did manage to find a convenience store, which was good. I walked alongside a river and then found a mountain. There looked to be a mountain trail, and this mountain didn't look that big. I had some time to kill, so I thought, why not climb a bit? I've got nothing better to do. I parked my bike at the entrance and started walking up the mountain. Well, it wasn't really high enough to be called a mountain, exactly, but it wasn't a hill either. It took about 30 minutes to get to the summit. At the summit, there was this little park. I reached that park just as the sun was going down. I felt a bit dumb. I was used to the bright night lights of Tokyo, so when it got dark, I was never really bothered by it. Thing is, I'd forgotten I was in the countryside now, and when it gets dark there, it gets real dark, real quick. It was turning pitch black in no time, pitch black with me stuck up on top of this mountain. I didn't like the sound of that so much. I wanted to get out of there as soon as possible before the last remnants of the sunlight disappeared into darkness. Since it had taken me about 30 minutes to climb up to the summit, I thought maybe I could make it back down in 20 or so if I hurried. I was about to scramble down the mountainside when I heard a voice call out to me. It was a woman's voice, and that was weird. I hadn't noticed anyone in the park at the summit. "Where are you from?" she asked. Huh? No hello, or excuse me? What's up with that? When I turned to face this voice, I saw a woman standing there, grinning like mad. It's getting dark. I'd better head back now, I said. She didn't say another word. She just stood there grinning at me. I didn't like that. What kind of person stands there on the top of the mountain and grins at you? The strangest thing was that although her mouth was smiling, her eyes weren't, if you know what I mean. It was like a fake smile. I can't describe the uncomfortable feeling when our eyes met for a few moments. I backed up a bit. I really gotta get going now. I started heading down the mountain as quickly as I could. I was a bit worried the woman would follow me, but when I looked over my shoulder and saw she wasn't there, I was a bit relieved. When I got back to my bike, it was now pitch black. I was just about to reach out and grab the handles when I heard a voice call from behind me, "What's your name?" I spun around in an instant, only to find that creepy woman standing right behind me, studying me with her eyes, smiling, this robotic smile. I swear I'd looked over my shoulder a dozen times as I went down the mountain, so I had no idea how she'd managed to either evade my sight or get down here so quickly and silently. I was really panicking now. Something about this was not normal at all. I didn't reply. So she asked me again with the exact same intonation. I said a common name, of course, a pseudonym. She didn't say anything in response. She just kept staring at me and smiling. Okay, well, I'm getting out of here now, I said as I threw my leg over my bike and started pedaling as hard as I could without looking back. I wanted to try and calm down. My heart was racing. I pulled into the convenience store on the way home. I wanted to read a magazine or do something to distract myself. Afterward, I went home with no further issue. I spoke to my mother about that encounter with the strange woman, but she didn't seem to believe me. She just laughed and said, "Oh, did you see a ghost or something?" I couldn't get that strange woman out of my head, though. The way she'd followed me, that horrible, insincere smile, it haunted me a lot more than I thought it would. I tried to think more logically about the situation. Maybe she was a local to the area. Probably she knew a shortcut down the mountain, and that's how she was able to pop up behind me so easily. Since she was a local, she probably knew everyone in town, and that's why she asked me my name and where I was from. Perhaps she wasn't as creepy as I made her out to be in my mind, but something still felt off about this. I always trust my gut in these situations. I hung around my parents' home for about a week longer, then decided to head back to Tokyo. I was waiting to get on the bullet train when my heart sank. I saw that same woman from the mountaintop just on the other side of the tracks. She was wearing the exact same outfit as the night I'd seen her. Only one thing was different. She wasn't smiling this time. There was absolutely no sense of expression on her face at all. She didn't realize I'd noticed her at first, but when she saw I was looking her way, she locked eyes with me, and that insane grin crept across her face immediately. It looked as if she was trying to say something to me, but I couldn't hear or make out what it was. She broke into a full-on sprint toward the station stairs in an attempt to get to my side of the tracks. She was barreling right toward me when the train finally pulled in. I jumped on board and headed down the aisles, knocking into many people and barging them aside in an attempt to find a place to hide. I was terrified the whole journey back. I felt for sure she was on the train somewhere. In fact, I'm not entirely certain she wasn't. I got back to my home in Tokyo yesterday. I really hope I'll never see that woman again, but I can't get that creepy smile out of my head. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.